And now MVL responds with knight to f6, targeting the e4 pawn, and this complete setup is known as the Italian game two knights defense. And since this e4 pawn is attacked, so Fabi defends with d3, bishop to c5, knight to c3, a6, creating an escaping square for the bishop, and Fabi goes for h3, covering the g4 square so that black can't enter. d6, okay, so opening the diagonal for this light square bishop, a3 by Fabi. And you can see what he's preparing for. Maybe he wants to push b4 on the queen side to gain some space and to attack the bishop. Here, he plays h6, and usually white continues with the move b4, but Fabi goes for bishop to e3, asking for bishop exchange. But MVL shows no interest, he just decides to castle. Okay, so now a4 by Fabi, he stops any idea like b5, and I know there is a question that comes in your mind that by pushing the pawn to a4, doesn't white lose control over the b4 square? I mean, now black can go for knight to b4, and guys, if this happens, then Fabi could, simply play knight to e2. And look at this. In the next move, he can play the move c3 to kick the knight, or he can also reroute the knight to g3 to, attack the king side. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move a4, MVL played bishop to e6, asking for bishop exchange. Bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, knight to d2. And you can see he wants to reroute his knight to c4, where it will control, the key central squares. Okay, knight to e8 by MVL, clearing the path for the f-pawn, and in the next move, he is preparing to push f5 to challenge the center, and start a kingside attack. Here, Fabi continues with his plan, and he jumps his knight to c4, and look at this. He's eyeing the d5 square. In the future, he can bring this knight to e3 and then, jump to straight into d5, creating a monster outpost. Here, MVL challenges, that strong knight with knight to d6. He wants to trade it off because it's, too annoying. Knight to e3 by Fabi, and he simply says, I don't think so. He brings the knight to e3, and you can see he's laser focused on that d5 square. And Fabi finally lands his knight on this legendary d5 square. Okay, so knight to e7, and MVL, doesn't want this knight into his doorsteps. b3, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and now MVL goes for the break f5. But Caruana shows no interest, he just advances on the queen side, b5, and you can see MVL doesn't capture the pawn, simply he just advances it. And now here Fabi can continue with the c4, just trying to rip open the queen side. But guys, here he goes for queen to e1, preparing for queen to e3 so that he can target the c5 pawn. But that's a mistake because this is a bit slow. Because MVL pushes f4, he completely shuts down the e3 square. So the white queen can't go there anymore. And I know some of you might be thinking about queen to c3, which also targets the c5 pawn, but MVL could just play knight to b7 to defend it. And you can see here black is perfectly fine. So what I am saying that it's a bit too slow. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move f4, here Fabi plays f3. He stops any further advancement of the f-pawn. Okay, so now rook to b8 by MVL, and now here white can continue with the move b4, trying to open up the queen side. And if black decides to capture on b4 with the c pawn, after queen takes b4, in the next move Fabi can consider the move d4 to blast open the center. But in the actual game, after the move rook to b8, he plays queen to f2, eyeing that weak c5 pawn. So MVL defends with knight to b7, rook at f goes to d1, rook to d6. And he is putting pressure on the d3 pawn. And guys, from now, the game is going to become interesting. I mean, look at this position carefully. How will you continue from here? And guys, as you can see, this d3 pawn is defended by the c2 pawn. But in this position, the best move for white is to play the move c3. And I know this might look strange because by pushing the pawn to c3, white also weakens, or we can say removes, the defender of this d3 pawn, and black can now just capture on d3 with rook takes d3. And guys, what if I tell you that actually, white's main plan? I mean, now comes queen to c2, creating pressure on the rook. And if black tries to exchange the rook, then you can see, since this queen is attacked, so that's why queen to h4. But after that, b4, c takes b4, c takes b4, and when the dust settles, you can see white gets this open file for the rook, and also an active knight which is well settled on this b6 square. Okay, so in the actual game, so after rook to d6, here Fabi goes for king to h2, a calm king move, getting away from any further threats. Queen to e7, and after that, rook to g1 by MVL. He wants to push g3 to open up the king side. So to defend this, rook to f8, preparing for rook to f7 to defend this, second rank. Rook at a goes to d1, and now for black, it's better to move this king to h7, getting away from, the eye of this rook. But instead, he makes a mistake with queen to f7. And that's a mistake. And basically, this is a mistake. And I know. And after that, Fabi brings his queen to e1, preparing to push b4 to rip open the queen side. King to h7, b4. And you can see white is now targeting the queen side. So how can black continue the game? And guys, the best move for black is to consider the move rook at f goes to d8. And let's suppose if white captured on c5, rook to d4. And you can see now black rook gets into the center. And you can see here black is holding the position much better. But okay, so in the game after the move b4, here MVL plays queen to e7. He wants to swing the queen to g5, but he's ignoring the queen side tension. I mean, Fabi takes advantage of this with the move c4. And by the way, if black plays rook at f goes to d8, then white cannot push c4, because then black is just going to capture the pawn on d3. And this shows how important the move rook at f goes to d8 is. Okay, so now MVL centralizes the rook, and after that some captures happens on the queen side. Knight to d5, Fabi targets the queen, so that's why. And guys, in this position, MVL makes a critical mistake with e takes f4. And that's a mistake because in this position, Fabi finds a god level move. Can you guess the move? Just pause the video and try to find it by yourself. And if you find the move rook takes g7, then congratulations, you are a genius. The idea is to rip open the center, to rip open the king, and after king takes g7, Now queen to g1 check, and simultaneously, attacking this undefended rook on d4. Okay, so guys, now I have to tell you something. For that, we have to go back to the move e takes f4. Yep. So again, the question is same, that how can black defend himself from this, move? And guys, let me clear your all of yeah. So let me clear your all doubts that some of you might be thinking to defend this threat either with the either moving the rook to g8. Okay, so let me go back. Yeah, so some of you might be thinking that you can defend this either by rook to g8, either by rook to g7, and either by queen to d7. So okay, so guys, basically in reality, all of these moves are not going to work. I mean, let's okay, so for that, let me show you a quick variation. So let's suppose if black goes for any move like rook to f7, so that he can defend on g7, so that so that white can't sack the rook, but f5. And the plan is to yes, basically the plan is to bring the queen to e3. And let's suppose if this game continues like knight to c5, queen to g3, with the same threat of this check. And if queen to f8, if he tries to defend, queen to g6 check, king to h8, rook to c1, targeting the undefended knight. So knight takes d3, but knight to f6. And guys, I'm still in shock that what kind of move is this? I mean, here black has two options, or we can say two ways to capture this knight. So let's suppose if he goes for g takes f6, and guys, now there is a mate in 5. Comment down your moves. Okay, so the move is to sacrifice the rook with rook to c8. And obviously, black cannot capture due to the threat of queen takes h6 check. So that's why if he goes for rook to d8, just rook takes d8 with the same idea of deflecting the queen, so that after queen takes d8, just queen takes f7. Okay, so let me go back to the move. Yup, knight to f6. Here another possibility is rook takes f6. And guys, can you guess the move? I think most of you got the idea. Yes, you are right. Rook to c8 with the same threat. And let's suppose if queen takes c8, then queen takes g7, and that's a mate. Okay, so let me go back to the move. Yep. So yeah, so basically in this move, so as we can see that nothing is working. So how can black save the game? And guys, let me tell you something, that the only move which can save this game is to sacrifice the rook with rook takes d5. And if you find this move, then I can say you have amazing god level knowledge in chess. I mean, only legend can spot this move. The idea is to eliminate white's most dangerous piece, which is the knight, which is basically leading the whole attack. After e takes d5, rook takes d4, and when the dust settles, you can see white has the double pawn on the d file. Yeah, so, and whereas black gets a passer on the e file. And guys, I mean, seriously, this the move rook takes rook takes d5 is not easy to find. Okay, so let me go back to the original game. Yeah, so basically after queen to g1 check, here here Maxime goes for king to f7, queen takes f4, queen takes d4, queen to c5. MVL tries to exchange the queen, but queen to f6 check. And basically here Caruana takes advantage of the black open king, queen to e5 check, king to d7, and after that Fabi brings the final piece into the attack, threatening a deadly check on g7. Here MVL tries to defend with rook to f7, but in this position the final move by Fabi is knight to b6 check, and in this position MVL resigned, because one thing is clear, that this king cannot go to d8 due to the threat of rook to g8 check. And let's suppose if he goes for king to c6, queen to e8 check, king to d6, rook to g6 check, king to c7, and yeah, just knight to a8, and that's a mate. What an amazing game by Fabi. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.